Maybe going into the budget now, trying to make that transition. And you talked about the Radical Centrist Coalition, and in a way, the Gang of Six, Gang of Eight, Gang of 45, whatever we want to term it, is a move in that direction, certainly. You know, do you sense that there is, I mean, whatever the number is that we say, is a real sense among those groups, among the members of those groups, that we want to reach out, we want to solve problems?
Yeah, I think there really is. I think the number is bigger than 45. I can't speak to the House. But I think it's the majority of the Senate. And I don't think it means that everybody's going to be a moderate or a centrist. I think there are going to still be people that are going to be progressive and conservative. But I think there's even ways that say, okay, you want this, I want that. You know, let's both get 80% of what we want. And we can, you know, they grumble a little bit, but we'll both vote for something. You know, what kind of crystallized this to me in recent time was this Keystone Pipeline decision. I don't think the Keystone Pipeline is going to be an enormous job here. I don't think it's going to solve our energy problems. But I do believe it ought to go ahead and be built in an environmentally appropriate way that bypasses the areas in Nebraska, particularly if Canada's going to go ahead and, you know, go after the tar sands. But that vote, that should have had 80 votes, was set up was, our Republican colleagues took the decision and said, let's get rid of any environmental review. Let's so fast track it that there's no process. And as opposed to saying, let's link this with, you know, an energy conservation bill that would be bipartisan, or renewal of the wind tax credits, or something else that would not be controversial, but there would be a little bit of give to the kind of alternative energy folks on the other side. So let's have, if you're going to have an all of the above, you need more oil and gas, but you also need more renewables. Let's put a couple of these together that are relatively non-controversial. You would have gotten 80 votes. Instead, it became one more incident where we didn't get something done, and there was, you know, we'll probably get a chance to revisit this, and hopefully next time we'll be able to get something that would be successful. But that kind of common sense, you know, here's where we can meet in the middle. Even if you're conservative, even if you're progressive or liberal, the process doesn't allow it as much yet. But there are the numbers of the people. The one idea that lots of people have been talking about what you could do as process change here, filibuster rules and you know, secret holds, and a lot of the reforms I would support. But one that might be one of the most powerful would be if on every major bill there was at least a guarantee that there would be one bipartisan amendment, and that we choose the bipartisan amendment by whichever amendment had the most number of bipartisan co-sponsors. So you kind of have a king of the hill on each bill. That might allow, that would then either prove or disprove the theory that I've got, that there is a sizable majority in the Senate that want to see things get done.
From the outside looking in, I was afraid that, and we've seen the filibuster used by both parties historically very effectively at different times in our political history. The most recent sustained level of success by Republicans in using the filibuster to not only, you know, maybe craft legislation or push legislation in a direction, but simply stop things from happening, had me thinking that, well, nuclear winter is here, and if Democrats were to lose a majority, then maybe they would just resort to the nuclear winter filibuster on their side and guarantee that nothing gets done in the future. That's maybe the alternative to this? If the gains don't work, then that's...
Chris, that's a very real possibility. I mean, it's a flip of the coin who's going to control the Senate. I think the Democrats will eke out a victory, but it's a flip of the coin. And there will be a lot of my colleagues who are so frustrated by the fact that, you know, non-controversial judges, that people who should have been appointed a year ago are being held in limbo, that there'll be, I'm afraid, a payback. And that's why, for example, Lamar Alexander, the Republican senator from Tennessee, and I have started these dinners 20 at a time to try to say, can we find that space, or find some, you know, not a gang, we don't need another gang, you know, but loose affiliation. Lindsey Graham said we ought to form the volunteer fire departments, you know, that you come when you can, but you kind of all agree that we want to see things get done. And you know, I think even on that effort, the jury is still out. The interest is there, but how do you crystallize that interest into specific action? And how do we make sure you do it early enough that regardless of what happens next, after the next election, we won't be back in the same spot we're in right now.
Because it's not just within the Senate, it's also the way our system was set up was so that actually parties wouldn't be the main combatants, it would be the two parts of the legislature.
Right.
And we see that now because the House is of a different majority than the Senate is. But even then, even if you guys in the Senate can work out agreements, and obviously you're talking about how the gang concept is, you have House members too who are trying to work together in this respect. But is that another stumbling block? Is not whoever's in control of either legislature, part of the legislature, is just making sure that as many people are on the same page as possible.
Well, there is. I didn't appreciate as well how different the House and the Senate are culturally, approach, how little you know what's going on in the House if you're in the Senate. We work 200 yards apart, but it could be 10 miles apart in terms of kind of day-to-day interaction. A lot of the older members say, if you're a House member, your opponents may be of a different party, but the enemy's the Senate. So there were all of these, as you said, part of it was set up that way. That's one of the reasons why I find that so frustrating amongst some of the newer members who say you can't compromise on anything. It seems like, and then they say they want to support the Constitution. Well, the Constitution was set up as a slightly dysfunctional government, independent House, independent Senate, independent President, that all had to work together. I mean, there are other forms of government, parliamentary forms of government, where if you win, you control everything and you run your agenda through, and then the election comes, you get voted in or out. It's a legitimate form of government, but it's not the American form of government. So, that reluctance to find compromise or common ground, has been a detriment. I think it's shown in the approval ratings, particularly of some of the more extreme folks, that they may not have liked what the Democrats were giving them, but they don't like what this new crowd, particularly in the House, is giving either.